Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Cup of Three. My name is Ashley. I am joined by my friend and co-host Mabel and fiance and co-host Agu. How you guys doing?
Hello.
Pretty good.
I wanted to do the air horn sounds, but that would probably be a bit aggressive this early in the podcast.
Everyone just like tears out the earbuds and are like, I'm over this.
Nope.
This guy's volume is all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if this is your first time joining us, we're a podcast covering reality shows on love and relationships, currently covering Married at First Sight Season 12, and we are going to be talking about Episode 13 today, titled Unanswered Questions. So this is when we see everybody talking to the experts again. So Pastor Cal and Dr. Pepper sat down with one spouse from each couple and talked through what their questions might be for how they would be able to make a decision by decision day of if they want to stay with their partner or get a divorce. So I want to start with Ryan and Clara. I think our theories are kind of being proven true a little bit from what we talked about last time, that Clara is being very forthcoming about her frustrations, her sexual frustrations with everyone except for Ryan.
Right.
Yeah.
The one person who can solve her problem. And
can he? We don't know.
try to, I guess. We'll see. We don't know yet. So when she has her conversation, she talks with Pastor Cal, and she brings up how she feels ready to say I love you and is worried about saying that to Ryan. But she also, when he asks her at first, is like, yeah, our relationship is a 10 out of 10. So, I mean, what did you guys see when she was talking to Pastor Cal?
I was hoping she'd be a little more honest. I mean, I feel like we've seen her, again, outside of conversation with Ryan, we've seen her be a very upfront kind of person, be like, this is who I am, this is what I think, this is what's going on. But then she gets in front of Pastor Cal, and it's like, almost like that student-teacher relationship where it's like, I gotta be good, I gotta behave, I'm prepared, I'm ready to talk, and I have to be, filtered. And I was like, wait a second, where'd the Clara go that we've been seeing all these episodes? And why aren't you being honest with Pastor Cal?
Yeah, no, exactly. I think they're in the just middle ground of relationships where I don't think they're not awful. We've got couples that are a lot worse than they are, and I think they know that. Like, they're cordial, they're nice around each other. They've got a lot of things in common and a lot of interests that they share. But clearly, you're not all the way there, though. So it's I was actually surprised to hear that she didn't want to say that she loved him. Just going off of what we've seen, I don't know if there's enough that you've seen enough to even know that. So, and then, like you said, I think Ryan might not understand how big of a problem this is. So
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
He's in the dark.
And even the way that I liked how Pastor Cal framed what she was saying, that he was like, if you're saying you're ready to say I love you to your spouse, but you're worried about putting that on the table because you think that might negatively affect the relationship, how could you be a 10 out of 10?
Right.
And I think it just comes back to the theme of Clara not feeling ready to be completely transparent with Ryan yet, because she said this is the best relationship I've ever been in. So if you've had bad relationships leading up to this, you don't know what that looks like. You there are components of this relationship that she is encountering for the first time, and it's like, if you're used to always having a bologna sandwich for dinner, but then you get ramen one night, you're like, oh, hell yeah. But you don't know. You could have Alfredo, girl. You could be you don't even know.
There's better.
This is the food tier system. Alfredo is topping.
And comparatively to bologna and ramen.
What if it's
ramen.
authentic Japanese ramen? I'm sorry.
Oh, then that's top of the list.
That's
obviously.
actually, There's then there you go. It's like you're the ramen packets where you don't realize there's actual ramen.
That's right. You're like,
actually,
this is inspired by something better.
Right.
It'll change your life. But I think that's what it is. Is just she doesn't have that frame of reference. So it's like, this seems fine. This seems fine. And I just have this one lingering thing, but also there's, and I think I've kind of, I can kind of relate to Clara in this way where like I've had past relationships where I'm just like looking back, I'm like, oh, that wasn't nearly as good as I thought it was. And there's all these problems or whatever.
Yeah.
And then being in what I think is a nice, healthy, balanced relationship now, I'm like,
10 out of
oh,
10.
it's 10 out of 10.
I'm not saying 10 out of 10.
That is a trap in itself.
Yeah, it is.
But you kind of feel like you should just be grateful for having a normal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't feel like there's space or it's reasonable for you to be like, I want more. I want this. I have these needs that aren't being met, like all that kind of a thing, because you're coming from a place of insecurity and instability and trying to establish that for the first time. So that can be really, really hard. I wonder if that's what's happening with her.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah. I mean, it could be possible that, because right now the issues that they do have seem like they're issues that could be addressed. Like they're not end it all type issues. I mean, I could see it becoming that if this continues, but so I imagine that's part of it. But so speaking of them, I think the editors this episode, you guys were busy. You were very busy. Married at First Sight editors. You guys cut everything up. I don't think I've noticed it as much as I did this episode of just like, I could hear the voiceovers that they pulled it from a different clip and just, it was a lot. Oh my gosh. And like, I imagine they were trying to summarize it, right? Like they're trying to get the gist of the conversation in a short bite. So I'm not calling you guys nefarious, but
I am.
Other people might. But I think with them in particular, it felt like there's just a disconnect there. And that was the big thing I was getting, where they're similar to, like, they don't have fights because they don't really address the big issues. You just kind of stay in the issues that you know are fine. And coworker type relationship. But I think it's clear that religion is going to be probably going to be an issue for them. And the sooner they address that, I think the better. At the end of the day, he is the son of two pastors.
Ministers.
And ministers. And the more and more we hear about him, the more I think like he's probably a virgin, and that's fine. I'm not.
You think so?
Yeah, at this point, just because of, he wants to wait until everything lines up. And she mentioned that he's had relationships where they've dated for years and that hasn't happened. So taking all that together, I think this is a big part of his personality and a big part of his viewpoint. So if you don't line up on that, there's some people where, like she mentioned, her parents had different views on religion and they were fine. But some people, religion is a larger part of their life and a larger part of their identity. So for those people, it might not be that simple. And that's the main thing that I'm getting, the main concern I'm getting from them. Like, I think the type of sexting could hopefully be addressed, but the thing that caused that is viewpoints on religion, and that they're not really talking and mentioning as much. So that's my concern.
And the thing I see with that is that they keep just kicking the can down the road. Maybe it's like him just kicking the can down the road saying, oh, I'm not gonna write it off now, we'll deal with it when we get there, whatever. And then her just completely hoping to never have to address it. It's just, that never actually works.
Yeah.
It just makes it worse.
Yeah. And actually talking through the logistics of that, of if you want to raise them in the church, how often are we actually going to church? Are we going to church events, or are we just going on Sunday? Are the kids going to Bible study? Are they going away to Bible camp if they do that? Or like this could be a literal whole community that you are raising a kid in. And is Clara okay with that, and okay with maybe being involved in those things while still not actually maybe identifying as Christian?
Seriously.
And I think that takes a lot of security to be able to do that. It's like being around people who believe a completely different thing than you and being okay with that and not being threatened or feeling like they're trying to, you know, tell you how to live your life or whatever. Like, that's a lot to ask. And then also try to navigate raising children in that environment. And like, I think also the interracial aspect is interesting with this because his, you know, he's Black. This is going to be a Black church. It's going to be a big part of, I think, the kids growing up and like understanding that part of their family history. And I think Clara coming in as, you know, a white woman into that space, and then also being like not super on board with all of the Christianity parts, she's going to have to navigate a lot of conversations and kind of do some work to make sure that she's showing up for Ryan and the kids in a way that supports them, but also respects her needs and boundaries, and it could get complex. So they have a lot to talk about.
And we're not hearing any concrete answers with them. Right now, we're hearing like, oh, Clara says she doesn't want to have the kids feel forced. But what does force look like? Is that going to church every Sunday? Is that forceful? Or is it like, oh, go to church, like a different church a month or something? I don't know. Like, we don't know what she means or where she's going to feel like it's pressuring the kids.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think there's a trap here of trying to get into the specifics. Like, okay, if we were to have kids, can they go to church every weekend? Okay, if they do church, are they going to go to Bible study? I think the more the conversation that they should have is, you kind of like, I've heard some different lawyers will argue like the thought process behind the law. So even though the law is this, even though this is what they wrote in the Constitution, what was their intention while they're writing that? And then you can kind of go off of that. I think that's what they kind of have to do with this, is like, what is his overall viewpoint in terms of how he views his religion and his identity? Like, there are a lot of people who are Christian, who are religious, who are Muslim or whatever different religion, who will just go for the big holidays. Like, oh, I'll go there for Easter, Christmas, and then I don't care about the rest of the year. Well, that type of person, you know, that's a completely different, like, yes, they're Christian, but that's a completely different form of Christianity, as opposed to, I have some family members who will do Bible study on Wednesday, they'll go to Mass, and then they also volunteer. It's like, when you're doing something 3 times a week, that's a big part of your identity.
Exactly.
That's your community, that's your friends, that's that type of person. If they're going to be there that often and you're not there with them, it's almost like the Virginia and Eric situation, where like, if he also liked to go out and he would hang out with her on weekends, I don't think they would have that big of an issue, because their friend group would be the same, their interests would be the same. It's a way bigger deal when you're not part of that. So yeah, like, just, I wish I could just kind of like go back in time and get them and say like, hey, like, let's talk, this is what you guys want to actually talk about, this is what matters. Like, how big is, you know, the religious community in your life? Or I guess hopefully that makes sense, but like, just that conversation.
And what does spirituality mean to you? What does that look like to you? And even outside of, like, to your point, to like back it up to what this is actually about, just them in their marriage right now without children, what does spirituality look like to him? Does he, and she's been living with him for a month now, so she might be seeing him, I don't know, reading a Bible or going to different classes or meetups or going to church or being involved in like his family things with the church, and she's getting a little bit of a peek into how he actually lives day to day. And is that how he wants to continue with children? Does that he want that to change? And also just have it be like about them as a couple. Like, would he like her to come to church with him sometimes? You know, like, that's all things that are completely on the table. I feel like they're just like, it's fine. We'll talk about it after decision day.
Yeah. But like, could you imagine how isolating it would feel if they did have kids and they go to church every weekend, they go to Sunday Bible study on Wednesdays, and they do Easter hunts or something, and she doesn't join in any of that, like you're like the odd man out in your own family. So that's just, I think that's tough, and hopefully they're able to address that. Like, yes, the type of sex is a big deal, but
and I think that's different than having two different religions and like religion and no religion, because then it's like the kids then probably do see it. This is just me assuming now. Probably do see it as like, oh, this is my religion. We just don't practice it a lot, or mom doesn't practice it with us. Like, I don't know. And whereas like it's hard to kind of see it from, oh, I don't want to force my kids, but I'm okay with them, you know, practicing the religion a lot with like the one parent, because then it's like I think that's more about conversation, right? To be like, oh, this is what your, you know, one parent believe. This is what I believe. And this is, you know, I don't know, like maybe that's just as you get older, but how I see like a 5-year-old, like they're not gonna be able to understand that. It's like, okay, we're going to church. Cool.
Yeah. But I think it also could be hard if, like you're saying, if there's one parent who is religious and the other that is not, there's an invalidation that happens where like a kid for sure wouldn't understand that, okay, this is going to church. We believe in Jesus. We believe that these historical things happen. We believe in these spiritual things. And then you get a completely different message with your other parent who's like, you know, I don't think that's real. And so there's a complete, how you talk about that with, this is a question I would have for anyone, is like, how do you raise kids to in a religious environment and ensure that like they're participating because they want to, and they're not like just trying to please the parent, or like they're doing it because they are interested in it, or they feel like they can make a choice about whatever they want to believe in. Like that's a lot of stuff to navigate as a parent, I think. But also that dichotomous view of what they might be experiencing in the future. They really need to be able to talk through like what that's going to look like.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that can definitely happen, but I think after a certain age, right? Like a teenager, for example, can make up their own mind before a 5-year-old. And a teenager can probably tell you a little more about, oh, you know what, mom/dad/parent, I don't want to go to church. I don't really believe this. I don't really like this. Or mosque or temple or whatever faith it is, versus, I don't know, 0 to 9, I'd be like, that's kind of hard. Like, what do you do in that stage where they haven't yet really made up their mind, I guess, or really know how they feel yet?
I mean, they're a kid.
They're a kid.
Like at that age, I think it's more of the community that you're putting them around. That's what you're deciding. So do you want their community to be more religious based, or do you want their community to be the kids that are in a neighborhood that are their age? Like I think that's the conversation, because I imagine wherever their friends are, that's where they're going to want to be. If they have more friends at church at that point, they're going to want to hang out at church. If they have more, their friends are on their soccer team, they're going to want to do more soccer. Like, at least when I was that age, that's what I gravitated towards. Whatever activity had more of my friends in it, that's what I cared about more. So, and I think from what we've seen, Virginia is not, if they were to have kids, she wouldn't pull them aside. And
you're talking about Clara and Ryan.
Sorry. Clara. Ooh, that's a no-no there. Confused the two white women on the show. My bad. But
Clara and Virginia look nothing alike.
I know. I'm awful with names. That's it.
That's all right.
But I think like she's not gonna pull them aside and say like, "Hey, I think religion is dumb." Like, she's just not gonna say anything, and then he's going to put a lot of his. So it's going to be unequal. Like, and a lot of people deal with this. I don't think it's that there are a lot of people from different religions. It's just, my thing is, how religious are you? I think that's what matters more, because I know plenty of Catholics, plenty of Christians who are like, if you're once a year, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. It's like, oh, Easter. All right, we got to do this because your grandma likes when we show up on Easter. That's a completely different type of Christianity. But I guess I feel like is there anything else you guys want to talk about with them? I think we've kind of hit it all. She doesn't want to change.
Yeah, I wish that when they were sitting on their couch and having their regroup, and he brought up that maybe Dr. Pepper suggested that maybe you would be feeling some type of way about not doing this type of sex yet, and she was like, I would say I'm a little sexually frustrated. Cut to her like screaming at the other girl, like, I'm so sexually frustrated. Like, like he needs to see that to understand the impact, and it's not. She phrases it as like, the more I ask about it, the further it gets away, and he just kind of nods at her, and I'm like, no, like you got to be real with him. Like he does not understand. He thinks this is just like a, hey, we talked about ordering Chinese food sometime. Do you want to do that tonight? And like, no, let's do it tomorrow night. And they just keep pushing it off. It's like, no, this isn't Chinese food. This is like a big part of what Clara's looking for, and you need to see it that way. So
well, and then the way she just justified it too. When I'm really frustrated about something, I'm not going to tell the other person, oh, but don't worry about it. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I know it's like, no, if I'm actually frustrated by it, I'm going to tell you I'm frustrated by it, and we need to address it. Whereas she's like, but I get it. You know, you're very different. You've had relationships in the past, and I'm like, wait, no. He's not actually seeing how frustrated you are if you keep saying that it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I regret trying to summarize this so we could go to the next couple. Because you're right. Yeah, like... Yeah, that's totally true. Also, like, I think she likes him, right? So she doesn't want to hurt his feelings, and this is a tricky conversation to have on camera. But like, make it clear that you're not happy about it, and then so he knows.
But again, if you've only had bad relationships up until then, it's very easy to fall into the trap of being overly accommodating when you're trying to state your needs. So she got like 10 to 15% of her point across, and he probably took even less of that to heart because she was softening it so much, because it's so scary to be like, I'm really upset by this thing that you're not doing, and it's like a big issue for me. Like, you have to be real. It's kind of confrontational, but there's ways to do that to still be respectful. And I think she's trying so hard to put on these caveats of like, but I know I want to respect your boundaries, and I don't want to force you to do anything, and whatever. And I think that's also just a thing that women are more conditioned to do when they're asking for something that they want, to feel like you have to kind of soften it as much as possible to the point of not really asking for what you want fully.
That's true. We'll see. I mean, especially, I'm curious now that he's seeing the show just like we are. I'm curious to see the reunion episode where he's like, oh, wait, you were blowing up on your friends about this? And one-on-one, you're telling me it's not really that big of a deal? You respect my viewpoints and my boundaries? We'll see. The other thing I wanted to say is that their description of how connected they are, 10 out of 10 they are, I was just like, you two are in different conversations but saying the same words. Like, was this practiced or rehearsed before?
It was a little suspicious.
Yeah, a little bit.
And also, like, what can you say is perfect? Nothing is ever perfect.
Right.
That's such a non-answer.
I don't know if I agree with that.
If you bring up The Rock, I swear.
I have
He's
nothing
got that
to
look
say.
on his face.
I have nothing to say.
That's what he was going to say.
Look on his face.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So I got nothing else to add here.
All right.
That was great.
Well, you are going to bring us over to the next couple of goo, so make way.
What is the next couple? I didn't.
Okay.
Well, the one you already, Virginia and Eric.
Yeah.
They're next? Oh, got it. Did we decide this beforehand?
Yes.
Did I just?
Yes.
Oh,
we had a whole planning session.
Yeah, I tuned out that whole conversation. What happened?
I assumed so. Oh my god. All right, Virginia and Eric. Let's go over here now. All right, so they had a visit from Virginia's sister and her two nephews. Came over to their place and hung out for a little bit. Sister's asking, I didn't catch her name. I apologize. Virginia's sister.
Jennifer.
Oh, Jennifer. Thank you.
Jen.
You're so good with names. How do you?
I'm a very visual person, so I have to see on the screen. That's all I
gotcha.
recall.
Okay. Anyways, So she is asking them a lot of questions about how the relationship's going, and they say the same thing they say to everyone. They're like, we just had a really good connection from the start, and, you know, like, we've had some challenges for sure. And then they're both like bobbing their heads and anxiously looking around and like not making eye contact. And they ask Eric and the boys to go take the dog out, and so they got to talk about how things are going. So I think it's always really helpful to see people who know these folks really well, to ask them questions and see their dynamic, because I think it's harder for them to do the kind of play acty thing on camera when it's people they know really well. So yeah, how did you feel like that went?
Speaking of the like energy that she was giving, I was like, I see how they're sisters now.
Yeah,
that was the thing I want to say about that. Yeah.
Definitely related.
What do you think, Agu?
It was just interesting combo. It was funny to me that she was like, "Oh, can I leave my kids with him?" And that pause, like,
yeah,
you're married to this guy. That's concerning if you're not sure.
Boys, come back.
Right, we'll see.
Back away from the scary man.
He's like trying to get them to sit, and like their dogs sit. I said sit.
He tried to give us dog treats.
Oh my gosh.
Caesar Malone out here. I don't know. I think I'm starting to hit like the plateau with them as a couple. I don't know.
Okay.
I got nothing
that's
to add
fair.
here.
I think what the bigger things that came out with them when they were having their conversations with Dr. Pepper and Pastor Cal were for Virginia. She talked with Pastor Cal, and she talked about how she's very scared of pregnancy and being a bad mom potentially, because she grew up as a kid of divorce and, you know, knows firsthand what that experience is like, being on the kid side of that. And I felt like Pastor Cal was pretty dismissive of her fears, especially around pregnancy. What did you think when he was talking her through that part of it?
Oh, I guess I'll go first because I am very qualified to talk about pregnancies. Yeah, no, you're totally right. I think it could have been done better. I'm hoping that was just they cut out a lot, but I'm not a fan when people say like, "Oh, you can handle that." Like, this is a big deal. This is like, yes, billions of people do this, but have done it, will do it, so on and so forth. But I think it's super fair to be concerned about it and to express that, and to just write that off like it's not an issue. It could be an issue. A lot of people die during childbirth, blah blah blah. And I'm hoping that they're going to be fine, and I'm not saying that that's going to be their case, but there should be a lot more empathy there, in my opinion. And in terms of them, just their conversation in general, I think Pastor Cal was trying to, give her Eric's perspective, which is good, but we weren't really seeing him agree or give credence to some of her concerns, because I think they're fair concerns, and nothing that she said seemed out of the ordinary or something that's a small issue. Like, they're big concerns, and they should be addressed as such. And I'm kind of hoping that we didn't get to see that part of their conversation.
So the way Pastor Cal responded, it kind of made me wonder if he was just trying to get to what he wanted to talk about, and since he didn't really share / understand, maybe, I don't know, the concern of the pregnancy scare that she, the fear of being pregnant that she has, he was just like, oh, it's not a big deal. Instead of, I think that would have been a perfect opportunity to dive deeper into it. Like, why do you feel this way? How long have you felt this way? Have you, you know, like with the bad mom, for example, that's such an easy question to be like, wait, do you feel like, you know, there's something there worth talking about, whether it's relationship with you and your mom, or have you seen how some moms are, or have you experienced yourself caring for your nephews and seen, you know, that kind of thing. Like there's some easy softballs there to be like, all right, what's a really good next question? And I just feel like he dismissed a lot of that because in his mind, you know, you're supposed to have kids and that's what marriage is for. And so that's, you know, next step. Obviously, you'll be fine. And I was just like, there's definitely more there that could be talked about. And I felt like he just kind of jumped over a lot of it.
Yeah. If I could hop in really quickly, he did do a good job of saying, like, the fact that you're even concerned about this makes me think that you'll be a good parent. So,
Sure.
you know, but I think it's the act of giving birth, that part that it was just like, yo, you can't dismiss that part. Like,
Yeah.
you gotta give that some credence. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I totally understand her fears. I have the same fears that this has been like something I've kind of worked through in my own way over time, and I think will continue to. That if you have a childhood that's rough in certain ways, then you really want to ensure that kind of lack of, it's rough to say lack of care, but that like that hard time, you don't want to inflict that on anyone else.
Yeah.
And you know how hard it was for you, and that there's still stuff that you're like trying to work through as an adult, and you know how long that takes and how much work it is and how
Right.
big it is. And so I completely understand where she is coming from, but the advice I've also received, like the same as Pastor Cal said, is like the fact that you're worried about that is an indicator that you're trying to, you know, evolve yourself to a point where you are going to be a better parent than maybe you had as a kid. And that's, you can only do what you can do. And I mean, she's talking about like, again, going to therapy again, which I'm very excited about for her, and things like that, which could really help her explore those ideas in more depth. And, you know, maybe not with a camera crew right there recording all her
Right.
responses about her deepest fears. And also just like pregnancy is really scary. I don't get why
Yeah.
it's always overlooked as this. It's just like not really thought about, because we don't really think about the actual trauma that like birth is. Like your whole body
Seriously.
is changing. You are like, it's crazy what happens throughout that whole process and the actual birthing process, and then like trying to become a human again after you give birth and you're caring for this little infant. And I think it's really easy for Eric in this situation to also maybe kind of think dismissively about that, because he's gonna, like, his career is likely not going to be affected by it. He's gonna
Right.
continue to be a pilot. He's going to continue to work his full hours, and he gets to come home and there's wife and baby. And I think that's
Right.
his ideal situation. And he's not thinking about it in terms of like, how would I feel if I were the one that isn't traveling all the time for work, and I'm here and I'm caring for our child and I'm trying to balance work, and my partner isn't here sometimes. And like, that is a lot to ask of someone. And I feel like all of that part of it isn't being acknowledged. It's just like, oh, you'll be fine, don't worry about it. But it's like, no, there are
Right.
legitimate concerns that like we're gonna have to talk through.
Yeah. Also, I think this is one of those things where, not to make this a generational conversation, but I think a lot of older generations view it as, oh, you'll get there, you'll get to that point. And I think the thing that isn't being discussed is older generations, other time periods, there were a lot of people who got pregnant mistakenly, who like they weren't, it wasn't something that they necessarily planned for, but they're happy that it happened. I think and there are a lot of people in our time period who did that as well, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think that's a very different type of thing of, oh, I'm just going to live my life, and if it happens, yay, as opposed to a lot of people that are in like our age group, a lot of people that I know, you're making the decision that you're going to have a child. So that's, you know, kind of like what Ashley was mentioning, planning around your career. Like, it's mommy tax and all that stuff. It shouldn't be part of the society, but we know statistically speaking it is. So planning for that, planning to not be able to work, planning for increased medical bills, like all that is stuff that we actually have to decide. And previous generations, you didn't have to. Like it was out of your hand, you know?
Yeah.
And like, yes, I get that they had different types of birth control. I'm not saying that, but it's not a coincidence that people are giving birth to kids much later in our time period than they were previous generations. Like you have to be financially stable to even consider it. It feels like. Right. So yeah, I totally. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, and the thing that I get upset about sometimes is that it happens. So becoming a mother, giving birth happens so much that people are just kind of like, oh well, it happens so much, it's fine. People can be concerned. Whatever, keep going. And it's like just because it happens a lot doesn't mean there's still like fears or something to be concerned about there. Like or even talk about like with her concerns, you know, of childbirth or being pregnant. And I think that's how Eric and Pastor Cal are kind of viewing it. Like, oh, so many women get pregnant. Oh, that fear happens all the time and it's fine. It's kind of like thinking, I don't know, like the only thing that comes to mind, and I know it's way different of an example, but like poverty or being homeless. Like, oh, you know, yeah, that kind of sucks. Yeah, but like if you don't actually have anything to relate to it, it just kind of seems like an inconvenience, maybe, probably don't, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, but in their situation, you know, Eric, Pastor Cal, where they will never give birth or never, you know, actually be in the, you know, in the process of being pregnant, it's a little easier to be like, oh, it'll be fine. It happens all the time. No, when you're actually the one going through this physical journey, then you can actually like maybe understand more. But then again, I don't think you have to go through the physical journey to understand it. But I think like for them, maybe it's easier to not understand it because they're not going through the physical journey.
Yeah, there's a bit of a lack of empathy there. I feel like a lot of guys are willingly or just ignorant of the general processes that women go through with their bodies, like even just periods in general. Like I swear if every man in the world had a period for 1 month, like everything would change. The world would go upside down. Like y'all don't even know.
It's probably true. Yeah, it's the empathy thing. You're totally right. Like, and I like that you mentioned the poverty thing, because I think that's a great example of like, oh well, when I've had this conversation with parents of like, oh well, when I was your age, I worked and was in college. I'm like, yes, but your tuition was $5,000 a year. Mine is that a quarter. Like this is not the same. Like, yes, it's the same school, but things have changed, and just being empathetic. Like, I know eventually we're going to be the ones who are at that point not being able to understand the younger folks, and I just hope that hopefully we are empathetic, because you don't understand unless you're in that person's shoes. And like, I'm not going to, I can try, but I'm not going to really understand the process of giving birth, or the fears that are with that, or the joys that are with that. Like, I'm not going to be in that process. And the best I can do is just hear people out when they talk about it and just keep an open mind. Like, it's not that hard, man. It's not that difficult. But not to attack Pastor Cal. I think I don't think he was as bad as, honestly, like Vincent in this episode when it came to that. So I don't want to like go all in, but I think it's that the conversation in general is just something that I'm glad we were able to talk about.
Definitely.
With Kyle. Them though, other things was the drinking conversation, which I think it was a good thing that they brought it up because they have been drinking a lot, and I didn't even notice a lot of their arguments were why they were drinking. I didn't put that one together.
Oh, I totally found that one. Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I like totally forgot that they were drinking half the time. Like,
Yeah.
But Dr. Pepper was like, "Yeah, I want to talk about this." I thought though it was kind of a bad setup to be like, "Hey, Eric, you should go bring it up to her," because I was like, "Is that the best way to do it?"
He's already so judgy about it. So
Right.
like, oh, you're giving him ammunition for this. He's
Right.
like, oh, okay. The doctor said I can come in, kick the door down, and be like, girl, stop drinking.
Right,
Like, it's
right.
gonna work.
This kind of feels like when you're talking to your friends about relationships and they're like, oh, if that was me, I wouldn't be handling that type of nonsense. It's like, well, so now you want me to go and like that? Don't no. Like it's really easy to be from the sideline throwing bombs out here.
Little backseat driver.
Right,
Backseat
right,
driver.
right. That would have been a better conversation for them three to be together and talk about it because,
Exactly.
like, I feel like Dr. Pepper probably would have done a better job of just talking about it in general. Whereas when you get Eric and Virginia talking about drinking, it turns in like first she doesn't even want to talk about it. She's like, I'm not talking about it. And I was like, well, that's not really going to get anywhere. And then two, she's like, well, and then it leads to the friendship conversation, which he talks about, wanting 1 week in a month where it's just them. So yeah, not very productive right there.
I feel like when Virginia said, I'm not going to talk about this, I feel like she was talking to production. I think they were
really?
trying. Yeah, that's just, I don't know why I feel that way. I just, once she said that, I was like, that wasn't to Eric. I felt like she was making it clear to them. Maybe they were trying to get her to answer the question or engage with him in the topic or whatever. And it felt like she was just being like very clear, like, nope, this isn't going to happen here right now. And thought, that's the take I got. But
You may be right.
yeah. And then the weekend thing of him, it just seems to be kind of a scheduling problem. But then they're also coming at it where she's like, you're being controlling and trying to cancel all my plans. And he's like, you're not prioritizing me. But then they're just arguing about how the scheduling is going to happen. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing?
This is probably going to come off mean, but when he mentioned that, I was like, oh, he's going to try to use this as an excuse to get her to not hang out with her friends when he doesn't want that to happen. Like the moment that he's like, oh, can we have just 1 week, 1 week out of the month? And I think that was smart on her behalf to be like, okay, let's plan this. Because what's going to happen if they don't is every other weekend, like, we never hang out together. I want you to stay with me. And then he's just going to constantly do that. And then be like, oh, well, I didn't know that I was going to be here this week. So let's do it now. And just, I get that you don't have full control of your schedule. I fully understand. But she's not the wife that's going to be sitting at home waiting for you to get back there. That's not her personality. So if that's an issue for you, maybe this isn't the marriage for you. And I think it's like, I get it. I totally get it from her side. And then on the drinking side, Dr. Pepper surprised me with that. Like that felt like Dr. Pepper was like, it almost felt like she was saying that she had a problem and that this needs to be like a polite way of saying that. And her, I think it's, we talked about this, Ashley and I, when we were watching it. It's hard. I don't know how to address it because part of me feels like I wouldn't drink that much, and that is a bit excessive for me, and that's a lot. But at what point are you just judging someone, right? Like I don't know how to gauge that. Like just because I wouldn't do that doesn't mean that it's not right or that that's the wrong way of viewing it. Like I think back to when I've gone on a cruise before with my family, and my grandma doesn't drink, and like she's from the time period where like the people who did drink were drunks, and like that's a big thing for her, is like, oh, I never drank, I was never an alcoholic, and she knows a lot of people in her life who were, so I get why she does that. But while we're on the cruise, my sister had a daiquiri, and she was like side-eyeing my sister like, oh, you drinking a daiquiri? That thing is like 80% sugar anyway. There's like barely any alcohol in it.
It's a slushy for sure.
It is a slushy.
And like, I know she was doing it as a joke too. So, Grandma, I'm not saying that you're judging, but like, she's listening to this. But I
She's our
think
top subscriber.
she
Oh,
could
yeah.
be.
Grandma Mary in these comments.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where like, and then if she knew how much I used to drink, she would be like, Lord have mercy, you're trifling out here. You know, like she's talking about the daiquiri. I'm like, I had like 4 beers before I even came out to see you right now. Exaggerating. But so that's one of those things. Yeah, it was after. But no, I'm kidding. So I don't know. I feel like I'm being judgy with it, and I don't know how to address this. So my instinct is like, hey, let her live her life. If she wants to drink less, snatch, like until it gets to the point where it's medically a problem. Like if she's out here developing at a higher risk for diabetes and something, like, okay, that part I get. But besides then, I don't know if it's worth getting into.
It seems to be such a big part of her life. I don't know. Yeah, like you're saying, I don't know if this is something that this behavior is going to change at all unless she wants to. And especially with the pretext of her feeling like Eric is trying to control her and trying to get her to be this housewife that he's looking for, then I don't think she's going to, if he were to say, I'd really like you to drink less, I think she would be like, yeah, F you. Like,
Yeah.
punch him as she's threatened before when he says he's going to be done or whatever. You know, like that's not the way to get someone. Like think about any habit you have, and like if someone were to tell you like, I don't like that habit of yours, can you stop or slow down with it? Like just think of the response that you would have to that. Like even if it's something that's like not something that could potentially affect your health or whatever, it's just like, who do you think you are? You can't frame it that way. You have to be It's really hard to navigate that without it being like a personal attack, and I definitely don't think Eric has those skills to do it where she would understand where he's coming from, that it's coming from maybe a place of concern. But even then, I don't think it's coming from a place of concern with him. I think it's coming from a place of, I need you to be this person for me.
When I hear the conversation between Dr. Pepper and Eric, I think back to Katie and Luke from previous season where
Oh, that's right.
Luke thought that she was an alcoholic, and they played the clips back of her having a wine glass, you know, hanging around in the apartment all the time. But now you see Virginia and Eric together, and the times that she's drinking is always out at night with friends. Like I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't really see Virginia walking around the apartment all the time with a drunk. And I didn't think Katie was a drunk either, or like an alcoholic. But I definitely don't think that Virginia's drinking all day to the point of not being able to put like a bottle down, for example. And that's where I'm a little hesitant to even think like if it's a problem, because if she's at least controlling when she drinks, that means she has some sort of control over it. How much she drinks when she's out, that's a totally different conversation. It sounds like she's, you know, just like bottles. Like, I don't know. Like, it sounds to, like, the way they describe it is like, it's like shot after shot after shot with friends. And again, we go back to that college days conversations where maybe she's never really left that college phase. But I don't know. I'm just hesitant about that whole conversation because it's almost like they're thinking it. So maybe I should put it this way. So if I have an alcoholic in my family, seeing someone who I'm in a relationship who drinks a lot may be a trigger for me, right? And then I may jump to that conclusion to think that once I see them with a drink, they're going to be an alcoholic as well. I don't know if that's the situation, but it kind of seems that way to almost put that definition on her.
Yeah.
Maybe a little preemptively.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I'm psychoanalyzing this, but I think the main issue for them, in my humble opinion, is how they socialize. So she seems to be a lot more social than him, which that's fine. But that's like when she's going to hang out with her to go drinking, quote unquote, I think what she's doing is she's hanging out with her friend group. And they like to meet at the bars, so that's where she goes to meet them. And I think that's something that he's not understanding is like I don't think the act of drinking is the thing. Like maybe she could I do think she needs to do better, but maybe she could just go there and hang out with them. I think the big thing for the issue that I see with them is he doesn't seem to be comfortable with her friend group. She's kind of said this multiple times. And I think part of that is he's been cheated on so much in his previous relationships that he's going off the assumption that you're more likely to cheat on me if you're hanging out with a group of guys, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's the main issue. And I don't know how they resolve that. Like, that's, if they could focus on anything, I think it's that. And yes, she could do better, in my opinion, with the amount. But that activity, I think, is the big thing. Because the fact of, why are you so, like, okay, if they were at their place doing all this, would he be as upset? I don't know. Like, it feels like I can't see you and you're hanging out with guys. That seems like that's the issue.
He even brought up in his interview, though, where he said she's almost too independent for me. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, you want her to
She don't need you.
Yeah, like, she doesn't. Maybe he's more accustomed to more, kind of like whatever the healthy version of codependent is, where you're just kind of a little bit more reliant on each other for things. Maybe he's more used to that. And so this, like, her really not, like, knowing that that's something that she can do with him. Like, oh, I can rely on you to do this for me. And you can do, I can do this for you. And we can have this sort of alliance of meeting each other's needs in that way. I don't think she's really used to that. I don't think he's great at expressing what that looks like, because it sounds like he's saying, I want you to rely on me, like, in a bad way, where she's only able to function when she's really, really leaning on him for a lot of stuff. And I don't know. It's just such a hot mess express.
It is.
Yeah. And I don't even necessarily think he's a bad guy. I just think he's looking for a different type of person. Like that whole, you can't turn a hoe to a housewife saying, like,
She a hoe.
Of course, I don't think she's a hoe, but I think it's the idea of, no, I know. But I think it's the idea of some people view growing up as, you hang out with your partner and you watch TV at the end of the day, and that is your thing. And I don't think that's bad. I don't think that's good. That's essentially what I do with my life at this point. Thank you, pandemic. Okay. Then cut out a lot of my stuff. But I think he kind of views that as like the way that he was talking with Dr. Pepper, it just felt like a conversation of equals. Like, he was hearing her out. He was like, there's that, like, it was a lot more calm, and like, he took it better. And I wonder if it's just because of the way she behaves. He views her as immature. And if you, like, that's hard. Once that's there, I don't know how you take that away, because everything she does now is you already have you're just looking for stuff to confirm it.
Exactly.
It's like, I think if you actually, like, the way she talks is a bit fast and manic at times, but if you actually listen to the points she's making really smart points. And I don't get why smart. Yeah, like, I don't get why she doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, yeah, she does.
Yeah.
She does.
No, that's a really good observation, because Eric clearly respects Dr. Pepper and her opinion. And if Virginia had been sitting in that chair making the exact same points as Dr. Pepper and saying, hey, you need to back off of the dog thing, because that's like her bringing a kid or something into this relationship. He literally said, like, okay, yeah, I take that. That makes sense. Cool. Got it. Simple. I'll change that. I'm like, I have never heard this a lot, like, this amount of flexibility from him, but he just had to hear it from an expert for him to take it as a good point. And I don't, that's not great.
It's just a level of respect. Yeah.
Yeah, like, but does that make him a bad guy though? Like, because there are people in my life who if they gave me opinions, I wouldn't be obvious that I'm dismissing it, but like there are some people in my life where if they're like telling me about finances, I'll be like, really? Okay.
My
And
issue is more with his respect. The way,
Yeah.
because I feel like he can be disrespectful to Virginia. And
Oh,
I
for
haven't
sure.
seen him do that with other people who he seems to respect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in my opinion, it's a pretty quick, almost decision he's come to on respect with Virginia, where if you're thinking you're going to build a life with this person, I would hope you have a little more respect, or at least want to have a little more respect for that person. And it's like, from the first week, we've seen that he's like, all right, done, decided, this is, how she is. I know how I got to be with her. And it's like, with an acquaintance, maybe, like with
Yeah.
your wife.
Yeah. First impressions are hard.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, just personally, if there's been times where I'm like, oh, I probably didn't give the best first impression, and I just personally, I tend to go like, I'm not going to get this changed, so I tend to like try to write off that situation. I don't think that's not necessarily right or wrong, but when people have that impression, like, it's an uphill battle, and I think she gave that impression of being young and immature to him, and that's all. I don't think that's going to change.
It's hard
for
to let
him.
that go. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So Brianna and Vincent had some conversations around budgeting, which was very interesting. They had their Excel sheet up on their TV. They're looking at it together. They've got pink color coded stuff. It was like the cutest, most nerdy thing I've seen. I really liked it. So they kind of go through their different line items and are talking about, how much they're going to spend in all these different categories. And I don't really have a super great sense of like what their income level is on both sides, but it sounds like they do disagree on how to prioritize what things to spend on. Where we've seen this conversation in all its remixed forms over the course of Married at First Sight in past seasons of one person wants to live their life and enjoy their money, and the other wants to be frugal and responsible, as if those are mutually like we can't do both of those things. So how do you think their conversations with money went?
First, their whole like budget conversation, I was like, oh, what is this? Just throwing out some random numbers, like First of all, her going from, I spend about $400 of clothes on month to him being like, whoa, that's a lot. Can you bring it down? And be like, I think I can maybe do 150. Wait, what? Did you pull up any previous receipts? Like, do you know where you maybe shop less? Like, are you gonna switch from, I don't know, like Gucci to Kohl's? Like, I don't know, like.
Oh my gosh, no, never. Gucky all the way. Sorry, Gucci. Yeah.
Clearly, you shop at Gucci a lot.
Exclusively.
Right.
I mean,
But their whole conversation was just so vague. I'm like, do you even know half of these numbers you're throwing up on the wall, or you're just kind of like spaghetti thrown on the wall, see if it sticks, and if it's done.
Yeah. I like the spirit of what they're doing. Like, it's,
Okay.
I think more people should do that. But if you're actually going to, you need to have your credit card statements up there.
Yeah.
And so you actually know what you're spending. Maybe she spends a lot, like you said, maybe she spends less than that. Just unless you're looking at the numbers, it was all feelings, no facts, that
Right,
conversation. It was
At the same time, I think it's pretty brave to put your budget up on national TV. I would
$9,000 a month budget. Gosh.
Which again, the numbers don't make any sense to me. Like,
how much are they making? That's my concern. How you
to be able to put away $3,000 a month?
Right.
That's a lot.
fantastic.
These numbers, I was really confused. Like, you're putting a third of your budget away every single month, but you also want to do $350 a month on dates. It just things were really adding up there. And speaking of someone who just moved, I had to throw my budget out the window. I was just, all the money's gone. All the money.
Yeah. It felt like that. I think we've talked about the house buying process that
A little bit.
going through, and it felt like that too. I'm like, oh, okay. So all the money's going to down payment.
Goodbye.
That's good
Right.
to know.
Right.
I don't. I think so. This is me being accounting / having Nigerian parents who never like to spend money ever. But the amount of money that they're spending on their car note, I'm just like,
Yeah.
no, that's a lot. That doesn't appreciate. That only goes down in value. You're literally throwing money away. And I know a lot of people do it, so no judgment, but that hurt my soul a little bit seeing that much.
$870 a month.
That's so much.
That's
And
a lot.
like you're saying, Mabel, like with it just kind of being these vague numbers, I think when you're kind of debating what categories are more important or where like something could be cut back a little bit, I think you have to get super specific. And again, it could just be a product of like they don't want to talk about like some of the finer details of some of these things on TV because that's understandable. But it seemed like they were just, Vincent was like, well, he clearly felt like she was spending too much on certain categories, and she was just like, well, you're trying to like take all of our dating budget away. Like, I still want to be courted. And I'm like, unless we're talking about specific things of like, okay, what does being courted look like to you? What types of activities? Let's try to get an estimate of how much that might be, and then let's look at our whole budget and see where we might be able to trim a little bit where it doesn't hurt that much, where it's like, yeah, we can order in one last night and then we have that money to go out on a date. Like, I don't think it's as hard as, I think budgeting is very synonymous with like kind of those tight purse strings and like really restricting yourself and denying yourself and being good and like that denial and it being a pinch. And I think for that to making adjustments in your budget that are more sustainable are the things that are small changes, where it's like one less time I will do takeout, for the same example. And it's like, it doesn't have to be this big painful thing. That's what makes us, that's the 0 to 100 we talk about that makes, meeting our goals really difficult. And them talking so vaguely about everything, I was like, we're not accomplishing anything. You guys are just confirming your biases about what you think the other person's trying to do.
Yeah. And this, like you said, it's really easy to look at it from that perspective. And it's funny how a lot of the times we've seen this conversation on the show, it's always the lady in the couple that spends more, and the guy's like, I can't believe you spend so much. First of all, it's expensive being a lady out here. Like the hair conversation they had. Yeah. I have family members who spend way more than $300 on their hair. Like, that's nothing a month. And I think that the general maintenance that happens is like, it's hard to understand unless you're in that situation. But there are definitely things that they could do better. And like, it sounds like he's driving a fancy car of some sort, because he keeps on dropping hints about that. So, okay, like, yeah, there's room for improvement, sure, whatnot, but just look at it from a sense of curiosity, not judgment. Guys on the show, like, it's
tell him.
Also, it's like, so much marketing money goes towards women. Like, there's a reason why women are the more expensive demographic when you're trying to buy ads. Like, it's the sweet spot. Like, there's a reason why. So it's funny to be like, oh, I don't spend that much. If we had as much marketing sent towards us, maybe you would.
Yeah,
you don't
because
know that.
Women are socialized to believe we're fundamentally flawed unless we do all of the things. If you're not keeping your hair up to whatever standard, if you're not doing your full face of makeup, if you're not doing your skincare routine, if you're not taking your exact vitamin supplements and having the exact workout routine and the exact outfits that look perfect for you but are on trend, and like it's endless. It is endless.
And even if you go back, like, a lot of gender stereotypes for women specifically are rooted in a superficial value of her physical appearance. That's
for sure.
That takes a lot of money to upkeep. And so when you're being judged on that and you're internalizing it, you're going to feed it, and it's going to become very expensive.
I saw a meme on, I think, Reddit. I'll have to see if I can figure out who it was so I can credit them. But it was something like, everybody wants a bad bitch until they see how much it costs for her to look like a bad bitch. Like, even the nails alone. Like, come on.
Yep.
Come
Oh,
on.
seriously.
So this
and
is
I just broke
where.
a nail yesterday. Yeah.
Oh no. Like how we're like, oh
Dang
no.
movers.
Is the nail
Oh,
okay?
it's annoying. It's annoying because then you get, like, it looks
sucks.
weird. You keep feeling it. Gotta go get it
It's so
fixed.
obvious.
I've been empathizing with ladies way too much this podcast. I need to freaking switch it up.
Yeah, we need more
kidding.
toxic masculinity in this podcast. That would make it better.
That's what I'm here for. That's what I bring to the table. No, yes, you're totally right. If we're talking overall combo, though, I do think, yeah, like you said, there's a lot. Everyone wants a bad B. Why am I saying everyone wants a bad bitch, but they don't want to pay? I get that. But it's a trap, though, and I think like that's important to recognize. Like, it's not a coincidence that lower income neighborhoods have more cash check cashing places. So I'm not going to besmirch a person who uses that, even though you're paying way more in interest than you should. But that's not like, I think that's a product of your environment. That being said, if you know that that's the trap, try to do everything you can to not fall into it, right? Like I do, there's a little bit of just being able to be mindful of that, I think, is a thing. So that finding that middle ground, because I think some people spend a lot more money than they actually have to, and I think that's, you want to like say that, but you don't also want to be judgy. So it's like, I don't know how to do that properly.
I mean, I think it's up to every individual person to figure out what works for them. Because just speaking from my experience, when I've had much more of a focus on making sure I don't know, feeling like I needed to look put together all the time and I needed to style my hair a certain way, like it took up so much of my brain space and my energy and my time. And those were the times I felt the least worthy, like I was the most insecure about myself, that was the only way I had ever, like when I put in the effort, those are some of the times that I felt like I was getting that feedback of like, yes, you are good. Like you are okay. Like, okay, woman, check. And I feel like getting older is acknowledging that I like to do some of those things, and that's okay. Like if I, after this pandemic is done, you best believe I'm going to go get my nails done again, and it's going to be great. And like, I'm okay with budgeting that money aside so I can like have that done, because it makes me feel really good about myself. Things like right now, makeup. I haven't worn makeup since like the beginning of the pandemic. I don't really know if I care to start again. Like I am very comfortable with it, and that's fine. But I'm also
there
like
goes
much
our
more
makeup
sure.
sponsorship that we could have had.
Yeah, I'm sure Elf's like makeup was really gonna be missing my $5 on their cosmetic products. Like I know nothing about makeup, and I don't really care to. But it's like, I think it's just really an individual thing of like, what am I okay with?
Yeah.
And finding that confidence in yourself, like what things are actually important to you. But I don't know, Mabel, what's your experience with that?
I've specifically with makeup, I've never really worn makeup. I sometimes dabble in it. Now I've kind of slowly gotten to a routine where I've gotten my like, all right, I don't like a lot of it, so I figured out where my minimum is, because it's just like simple stuff. But then I've also realized in the past of it's a slippery slope trying to keep up an appearance. So I have very curly hair, as those who are watching us on YouTube can see. I sometimes, when I was younger, would straighten it, and I actually realized it didn't always feel good to get the compliments of when my hair was straight, because I would hear nothing when it was curly, and then all of a sudden I straightened my hair for like a special event, and it's like, oh, wow, your hair is so beautiful, and I was like, wait, what? Thanks, but now I'm realizing I never heard any really compliments when it was curly, and I love my curly hair, so what's going on? And I realized that was not always something I felt super good about. It's like, don't get me wrong, I also like my hair straight, and I put it up, and I do it sometimes for like special occasions. But I don't love having to feel like there's like a negative behind the positive. You know what I mean? Of like
sure.
when I get done up, there's something more behind that. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a slippery slope.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I don't remember a lot in college, but I do remember there was a time that you did that. And I specifically remember people in class saying like, oh, your hair looks great. But yeah, I think I totally, yeah, it's unfortunate. I can't empathize, so I won't even try, but I know in my personal experience, like I enjoy working out and I enjoy it. And I think there's this, speaking of like traps, I think there's this trap that people get when they get into like the fitness space of you need to get every supplement that's out there. You need to get you gotta get fish oil and beetroot powder and like all this random stuff where like really the main thing is the whole point of it is you're just trying to get movement and to constantly get your blood just get your cardiovascular system moving. Like I think that's the thing where I've noticed that sometimes a person can kind of get sucked into it and that's where I try to be like I'm not saying, hey, so to use my example again, I think it's good. I'm happy that I enjoy working out, but I can also see someone who spends all their time in that and spends a large amount of their money trying to buy different types of workout equipment and like that, in my opinion, is not a healthy way of spending. So even though you're doing this, like you're doing the activity, it's how you do it. And I think it's like that with like makeup and things like that. Like I don't see, I'm not saying makeup is good or bad. I don't kind of have an opinion on it, but there are people who have like some makeup and then people who have a lot. And it's very easy to be like, oh, well, you don't need to put all this makeup. We like you the way you look, blah, blah, blah. But if we're being honest, like you probably wouldn't have noticed that person if they didn't have all that makeup. So like it's that like weird balance of if you're doing it in a like a healthy medium, but it's very unfair to attack someone for something like that.
I think it's also like I don't think it's fair to demonize people who do fall into the trap. I think the fault is in the trap itself, and this is usually just really more about we're getting Libby here, capitalism.
We're cutting all this out, cutting it all out.
We're like, it's like kind of a weird light version of victim blaming to be like, well, how dare she wear all this makeup? And it's like, well, she might, like, that's literally all she's been told all her life is that's how you make your face look appropriate. And you got to contour to make it look like it's a different type of face than you got under here. And like, I don't think that's really, I think where we can improve as individuals is just to try to approach those things mindfully and just have a little reflection and like, just think about like, okay, how do I feel when I do this? How do I feel when I don't? Like, how do I feel about that? and just kind of think about it and make sure that you're on the same page with yourself about what you're doing and that you're okay with it on your own terms and have it start there. Like everyone else can adjust to seeing my, bare splotchy face and I'm fine with that. Like I could give two hecks, but other things I do care more about and I'm fine with that. So it's just being honest with yourself, I think. And we got into this whole other area.
That was great.
We just pissed off any hope of getting sponsors, but it's fine.
Damn, capitalist.
No, I think more now we're leaning towards like the Dove sponsorship where you're talking about whole.
Yeah.
And HelloFresh. We're still waiting for you guys to call us.
Nice plug.
Thank you.
For free. Why do we keep on giving them free advertising? Like there's like 4 people who listen to this and now they hear about HelloFresh.
But they're all gonna subscribe now and become HelloFreshers.
Cups of 3. Nope, that won't work.
Cup of 3ers? Is that what you just said?
I said HelloFreshers.
Oh,
HelloFreshers. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have a good like catchphrase for our audience at all. Cup of three doesn't lend itself well to that.
Yeah.
Again, you're assuming we have an audience, and I think that's
Hello,
the problem.
4 people. Thank you for listening.
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, podcasts get very meta when you talk about the fact that you're recording a podcast.
It does.
It's like, oh, it takes you out of it. Okay, what
Now,
do we have next?
back to Brianna and Vincent.
Oh yeah. Man.
That's what we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
The compromise, once you brought it up, it was kind of a non-compromise, and even Vincent got a little frustrated by it. So the conversation started with Vincent bringing up what he talked to with Dr. Pepper and saying that, he likes to sleep in a little sometimes. He is very tired at night and he just needs his extra time to sleep in the morning. But Brianna wants to be up and going, and Adam. And she expressed that because she views it as being productive, that's why she also wants him to be up with her. And my first thought was, well, if you're productive, why do you need him to be up with you at the same time, in the same productive way as you are? Like, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And then the compromise conversation, which really isn't really a compromise.
She gave him more requirements.
Right.
She compromised on his side.
Right. First, Vincent was like, how can you compromise Brianna? And then Brianna,
You do
No,
what I did.
yeah.
Vincent.
That's their name from now on. And then Brianna is like, our compromise, excuse me. Like, this is not just my compromise. Like, oh, okay. And then she explains our compromise as, really, Vincent, you got to figure out how to wake up early.
She's like, we'll go to bed earlier. And I don't know, I guess I'll wake up earlier. I was like, you just moved the goalpost further out. What?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like the main thing that she's not admitting to, or I don't know what's happening with her, but I think she, like what he said, I think she worries that he's being lazy.
Yeah.
And that's some reflection on her that and I don't think that's true at all, but I think that's kind of the little thought in the back of her mind of, I have a lazy partner, and what does that say about me? And like, they're a representation of me, and we're a team now, and my husband's sleeping in on this weekend, like he's got all the time in the world, and I'm out here cleaning the kitchen. And it's like, no, he's just tired. Literally, that's all that's happening. He needs to rest. That's fine.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully one of our 4 listeners kind of gives their opinions on this, because I think this is just like a morning person thing. Like, I haven't been a morning person most of my life. I've been a night owl. Now I'm very much a morning person, well, leaning towards morning person. But I remember, like, when I would stay with my grandma, who's very much a morning person, like, when she would get up and do all the things, I could just feel the frustration if I was still in bed. She's like, what are you doing? Damn it. And, like, my dad, same thing, morning person. His kids weren't. And, like, he would get up, do all this stuff, and you could just feel the, like, I've already done, like, 5 different things. You guys are still in bed. And I don't know if that's, like, that's going to always kind of be there if they're that way. I don't think that's not going to I think the relationship's still going to work. But that's definitely that's a thing that morning people have. And I get it. Like, now that I tend to wake up a little bit more early, you feel like so productive, and it's hard to not think, hey, this other person hasn't done anything yet, and it's 12 o'clock. On
the other side, though, so I'm more of a morning person too, but I also I've had my years where I like to stay up late. And in one of my relationships where I did want to stay up late, whether it's like to watch a movie or to go out on the weekend, my partner was an early sleeper. And I'm talking like 9 p.m. in bed, and that means like getting ready for bed at 8 p.m. And I was like,
Damn.
the sun is still out.
Those are
They're
grandma
like getting
hours.
ready to go out for the night, and they're like going into bed.
Those are grandma hours for
it was
sure.
about that. It was like, because I remember the conversation we had about it. I was like, okay, what do you need? Like, what time? And he'd be like, yeah, like I want to be asleep at 10. And that means like, coming back inside, getting ready for bed, doing the bedtime routine so I'm sleepy, 8:39ish, and I was like, oh my god, no, like I want to be up doing stuff, because for me that, like, I was like, the way I was approaching it was like, this is our quality time after a long day, watching movies, staying up late, talking, whatever. So it was like similar to when I hear Brianna and Vincent talk about, oh, I want to make sure you're productive with me. Like, it sounds like she wants to be able to do things together, but also she has this expectation of what productivity means to her. But then in my situation, I needed to realize, like, there's compromise we can even do with that. Let's watch a movie during the day. Let's, watch it on the weekend. Just because I view a certain way of, what time, whatever, we should be up and at 'em, doesn't mean that's how the other person needs to be. And if we have those differences, whereas he was such an early riser because of it, and I was more of a late owl, like, then I can do my personal, productivity times at night. And there are a lot of studies that show that night owls and early risers are just as productive, because you still find those wee quiet hours to get stuff done. So just throw that out there. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, it's just achieving the same thing, but in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's really, and I like how that's a really great example, because it sounds like you got to the point where you could say, like, this is what that time means to me. It's not just like, I'm annoyed that you're, like, not going to be with me when I go out or something. It's that this time I feel like you're taking away quality time from me. But that can also be plugged into a different time of the day when y'all are both conscious. So, like, we can do that.
Conscious.
Yeah. I just think it's very hard to see it from the other side for people who are like that. And that's like, just, I think back to all the conversations I had with my old man about this, and he was so mad. He's like, why are you guys still in bed? I've already done this, and this. And yeah, like you said, you're still productive. You're just productive at different times of the day. And I think that makes it even more frustrating, because, like, they don't get to see you being productive. The morning person doesn't get to see you being productive, because you're hitting your stride at like 6, and at that point he's getting ready to go to bed, right? Or like, but also I like how she was basically trying to, like, give him sleep hygiene advice. I'm like, this is not the time for this conversation.
Phone before bed.
Like, yes, you're right. The sleep hygiene is very important, and I'm trying to do better personally about that. But this isn't the time to, like, let the man get some sleep. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I like how, like, that was their big, like, Dr. Pepper's like, is there anything you want to talk about? And, like, that's the thing that he's, like, really upset about. He's like, this woman won't let me sleep. Like, let me sleep. And, like, you could tell he knows that he's in the right, but he doesn't want to, like, come off as it was all very cute and wholesome.
The whole time, though, his face is, like, glaring and
He's so mad. But he also needs to find a way to express that, because he's doing his thing of kind of bottling it up, and she's just kind of trampling all over the conversation a little obliviously. And it's your thing, Agu, of, like, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And she's just it was rough.
Yeah. And I noticed, like, I have tendencies like that too, where I don't like to be in the moment and, like, explode or respond right away a lot of times. Like, I feel like there's probably some filtering I need to do before I respond. And so I think maybe he's approaching it from that way. But I've also realized in myself, there's not always the appropriate time later to say something. And there's also a time lapse if you wait too long to, like, think of through your own thoughts, where it's like, no, well, now it's pointless. And I've had to learn how to bring it back a little bit closer to the real time to be able to speak up, to, even if it's not like I don't have all my words together, but, like, say something, and then we eventually become more comfortable. And it's hard to do, because especially, like, Vincent and I, both Dominican, my family, like, we can be very argumentative sometimes, like, at, like, 0 to 100 kind of thing on arguments, especially my mom and I. And so it can be easier to be like, well, no, I don't want to explode, so I'm going to talk. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to stay quiet, and I'm going to walk away. But there's also a point where it's like, that's not always the answer either. maybe Brianna is asking a little too much right now, where she's saying, like, I always want to know in the moment. You got to tell me. Don't wait, kind of thing. It seems like she's not understanding where he's coming from fully. But I definitely think, like, Vincent could be a little more expressive, closer to the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, too, with Brianna, we're kind of seeing a lot of her, like, kind of black and white thinking, kind of rigidity, and, like, how she thinks things need to get done. And I think,
Yeah.
like, literally just the concept of flexible thinking is something that I had to learn in therapy, and it has helped me incredibly. And it's just kind of the idea of challenging the way that you're thinking about something. So the early morning thing, like, if my thought is the only way to be productive is to get up early in the morning, I can ask myself, is that true? Like, literally just asking, is that true to something? And, like, are there alternatives to that? Are there other ways that you can be productive? Is this really the only way? Are you sure? And start to break that down of, like, oh no, I guess you could be productive other times in the day, and maybe there's a different way I could do this. And I think that's something that she could take into this and think about, like, okay, do things really have to happen exactly this way for them to get done? Is that actually true?
Exactly.
Is me defining the way that he's going to clean this whole kitchen, is that actually going to ensure that the kitchen, is this the only way that the kitchen can get clean?
Right.
And, like, it's letting go of that control a little bit and acknowledging that the more you try to control things, the less they actually kind of tend to go your way. You're making more work for yourself. You're creating more tension between you and your partner. Like, it just kind of seeps into everything. And there's a lot of fear in letting go and letting things just kind of happen as they happen. But it also, it's a lot less work. This is a lesson I am learning, and I have found to be incredibly valuable of, is this worth my energy right now to argue about, like, if we need to empty the dishwasher now or later? Nope. It's not. So I can walk away, and that's it. That's done. Nothing to do.
I like I said, it's very hard, especially if you feel like you're in the right and you're like, I'm trying to get you to come to the right side. It's very hard. I totally empathize. It's funny though, now that I'm leaning more towards a morning person, personally for me, it has been a big, it's been a big help. Like, I've been, like, I've always had sleep insomnia or forms of it. And, like, it was pretty common for me to just kind of go, oh, I'm not going to be able to get sleep today. And I would, once or twice a week, I would just, like, not sleep. And it does affect you. It's one of those things that you don't realize. It's like a slow burn. And I think I was, in terms of productivity, things like that, I think it was fine. But in terms of just general health and general, like, your ability to handle problems when they happen, it's a lot more difficult to do that when you're, like, tired and sleepy. You're not as dynamic. You're not as, so, like, I totally understand why morning people / Brianna feel that way. I'm starting to become one, but it's just doing that from a less judgy point of view, if possible, where it's like, maybe that doesn't work for them. But yeah, in terms of me personally, it's been like, we go to bed at like 10:30 now, which is wild to me. Like, I used to, typically my normal bedtime would be like 1 to like 3 on a regular basis. So it's very, very different from the way I was just 4 years ago, 3 years ago. So, and like, I forget who, I think it might have been Jeff Bezos or something, where he was saying, like, like, the whole hustle culture thing of, like, you need to work more hours, and like, suddenly he, like, realized, like, no, like, I actually work better when I'm well rested. And, like, coming to that realization, I think that's it's a big deal when you realize it. So Get your 9 hours, get your 8 hours, get your 7 hours, people. Sleep is important.
Well, even we were talking about it before, our activities during the day matter a lot. So you talked about working out with, if you're actually tired, you use up your energy during the day, you're going to probably have better quality sleep. And so if you can kind of be mindful of whatever that is for you, to prepare yourself to have a well rest, and where, Brianna's trying to like tell him what is going to give him better rest. Like, put your phone down before you go to bed. Don't stay up late when you're laying in bed and that kind of thing. So, like, I kind of get where she's coming from, trying to build better quality sleep for him. But I think he also needs to figure that out for himself, what that looks like, right?
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Her telling him what to do isn't going to fix this problem.
I have one final little story about this. So when I was younger, my mom is a super early riser. Like my mom, my grandma, like the whole lineage of women in that family, just like the time that they get up. I'm like, when do you go to bed? I swear. When we go to Dominican Republic, my grandma stays up. Like she is always awake to cook. She is up in the morning, like probably like 4 a.m. Praying her rosary, getting breakfast ready, starting, and like I always love the juices, the fresh juice in Dominican Republic. So she's always like, or juicing stuff, and then she goes makes breakfast. She's ready to make lunch, and it is a big lunch in Dominican Republic. I'm talking rice, beans, chicken, or any kind of other meat. Side one, side two, eggplant, like
We're going
pile on food.
It's a meal.
Please do.
It's a meal.
And then she's up like ready for dinner, and we're still hanging out late, and I'm like, it is like 9 p.m. Grandma, like, what are you still doing awake? Don't you like wake up in like 5 hours?
She's like, I'm going to sneak in a quick workout,
Yeah. So all the women in like my family always super early, and so when I was younger, I was terrible at it. I never wanted to wake up early. And my mom, though, because she is also an early riser, would come in my room and be like, hey, you got to do this today, got to do that today. So I became really good at, like, not actually being coherent, but, like, being able to give responses coherently.
Oh,
You,
no.
like, train yourself to sleep talk.
Basically.
Oh,
I'm
no.
like, yeah, yep, I got, yep. And then she would like legit ask me questions, like yes or no questions. I like say the right answer. Like sometimes it'd actually be a no. And then later on, like noon, she's like, so you haven't done it? Like you didn't respond? I'm like, I was asleep, Mom.
You're like, that was my auto reply. I had it.
And they weren't always just yes answers. I figured out that it's actually still in me because my friend the other day, same thing happened. I was asleep, and she was like, yeah, like, what do you mean? Like, you legit were talking to me, like, responded. And I was like, I was asleep, girl.
I didn't hear
don't
any
remember.
of that. Yeah.
I like how there's a corner of your brain that's like, I got you, girl. You take a rest. I'm going to take over. It's like,
I got your back.
it's like in the play where they have the understudy, and it's like your understudy just cracks her knuckles and is like, all right, here we go. And they're like, haven't practiced.
Yeah.
That's
Too
amazing.
funny. But yes,
Great.
you both should come to DR. Today I'm wearing my DR shirt for, again, those who can see me.
Oh, nice.
One of the many DR shirts.
Relax and unwind.
Exactly.
I think it says. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No,
we haven't.
Oh, I was just gonna say, grandparents are like superpowers. I don't. When
Exactly.
I did my high school in Nigeria, I stayed with, lovingly called her Inne, which means mother in Igbo. But she's a relative of mine, but she's older, and in like a little bit more in a rural area of the country, and has a farm, and she would farm, and like I think. We think farming here, we have all the tractors and stuff like that. Like farming in Nigeria, at least, that's physical labor. Like you're actually hoeing the ground, you're actually tilling, and like you're doing all the work. And I remember during one of my breaks that I was staying there with her, she was like, "All right, we're gonna do this today." So we had to wake up super early in the morning. I'm already tired. I was definitely a late night person then, so I didn't even go to sleep. I was just like, if I'm gonna have to wake up by 5, I might as well just stay up the whole night. So like I did that, and we're just out here in the fields. And I remember at that point she was probably like in her late 70s, and she was legit doing a better job and had more energy than I did, and I was a freaking teenager. And I was just so like I like powered through it because I'm like, I can't let this 70-year-old outdo me. But it was amazing. Like, she's like doing all the stuff and like grabbing heavy stuff and throwing it down, and I'm like, how is this possible? You are killing it right now. And this just hard life will make you strong and diligent.
That's original
and,
CrossFit.
oh my gosh.
Seriously.
Yeah. And then like at the end of the day, she would have like a beer to unwind, and that was always the funniest thing because like she'd be a little bit tipsy and like that was her treat. She's like, I'm gonna have a nice Guinness tonight, and just experiencing
Grandma.
that. She got style. She knew what she was doing. She was going on.
Dang.
She was going hard. Or a Heineken. That's another big popular one there. But yeah, and like back then, I was like, you're superhuman. But like that's why she made it. That's why she was so strong and amazing at that age. And she's been doing that basically her whole life. So, it's so weird comparing our lives to the OGs, as they say.
Seriously.
Sponsored by grandmas.
Thank you,
Grandmas
grandmas.
everywhere.
Well, you know, what we haven't talked about yet is that, so we talked about pregnancy a little bit with Vincent and Brianna, that's a big fear of hers. And we got that clip when we talked about it last episode. We had that in the preview that she said she fears it. But now we get the added context that she has high blood pressure. And this is something that is just, I believe, is a genetic thing, but isn't something that she can have go away through a healthy lifestyle, unfortunately, which like really sucks, especially when you feel like you're doing everything right and then something just isn't working for you. It's like, damn. So pregnancy could actually be pretty dangerous for her. Like, it could obviously be dangerous for her and then the child, and a ton of extra considerations there. And when she brings this up with Vincent, you were saying this before we started recording, Mabel, that it felt like Vincent maybe didn't fully understand how dangerous this situation was, so his reaction was a little bit cold. But I mean, how do they even start to break this down?
Right. Well, it kind of comes back to the empathy we talked about before, you know? I think there's a lot of that extra effort that Vincent has to make to get that empathy, because he's never going to go through it himself to be able to just gain that by himself. But this is your wife now, and this is a serious concern. I would hate for anything to, you know, like I would hate for any kind of health issues to occur if she were to become pregnant. So I would hope that it's just smooth sailing the whole time. But like, even if it is smooth sailing, you know, you have to be aware of what could happen, right? And that's kind of why, you know, doctors even talk about it, why she already is aware to an extent of what could happen. Vincent has a lot of ground to cover. Is what it looks like to kind of get there to a point where he understands and is able to empathize a little bit. Because right now it's his main concern is children, which I get it. You know, he wants to. When I was about to say legacy, and then I thought of Chris, and I was like, yeah, that's not what I want to compare it to.
Legacy.
But like, I get it. Like, he wants to be able to build a family. He wants to be able to leave children behind. And I think that's also the kind of the money conversation he's having, like talking about saving and thinking towards the future. Like, it all lines up similarly. And that's how he's thinking about it all, which great. Good for you. Like, you want to be able to provide for your family and children after you pass. But I think, like, before you get to all of that, you're in the here and now. And the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to become pregnant before you have the kids. And that's where he's like, there's a little bit more of a presence in the present that Vincent needs to have.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe it's because I like Vincent, but I really gave him the benefit of the doubt in my head, at least. Maybe he just doesn't understand.
Yeah.
The risks with high blood pressure and
For sure.
and childbirth, and I think it's one of those things where, like, a lot of the country has high blood pressure. I forget the stat I saw, like like you have a very high chance of developing it in the United States at a certain point of your life, at least elderly people, older individuals. So I think he probably knows someone who has high blood pressure who did deliver. So I think that's part of it, is just kind of educating himself on it. I think for me, I was really surprised. Like you just don't see it that often, and I think it also just helped paint a picture of why she is so focused on certain things. Like I get it. If I was in that situation, I would view it as I'm already at a disadvantage. If I have any other health issues, it's going to be magnified, which is statistically speaking true.
Exactly.
So like you can't mess up. You have to do everything you can do to stay as healthy as possible, because it's bad enough having high blood pressure, add some diabetes or whatever to that. Now your life expectancy decreases even further. And I know not everybody thinks in life expectancies. That's a thing I do, and so I'm trying not to push that on other people. But so yeah, I totally understand, and it helped just kind of give color to her personality and her life of why she's so focused on staying healthy and doing all the things. And I think the fact that they know about it and that she's so mindful, while I definitely don't want to dismiss it, but I think to kind of use Pastor Cal's conversation, the fact that she thinks about it makes me like, if anyone could do it, it's her. Like that's the perspective I have. That's just, you can adopt, you can do other things. It's not must that it has to be, there's not one way to have kids, but if they do decide to go the other route, I think she could be okay as well. And they'll look through all the options. Like they seem like they can do this in terms of, like she's not going to just do a decision because that's what he wants. Like she's going to think this through, and I think that's what you need in this type of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely don't.
Options.
Sorry. Yeah, I definitely don't think he fully understands how serious it is, and I think that could be just a good little day trip for them sometime. Like, hey, let's go to the doctor, and they're going to explain to us, like, just have a very early family planning conversation of like what's realistic for us, what are the risks, all this stuff. So he might understand it a little bit more if he's not familiar with high blood pressure and how that intersects with pregnancy. I think that especially because when she brought this up, and then she brings up the timeline thing, he's like, well, if we had them sooner rather than later, like it would be a little bit better, or like this problem would only be worse if we wait longer. And it's like, so you're saying I'm still comfortable with you taking this health risk as long as we do it sooner, so that maybe there's a less likelihood of like bad things happening. And I'm like, you don't understand how insensitive you're being right now. Like she's talking about fearing for her life.
Right.
And you're saying, well, if we're going to do that, then we should do it sooner because you're young now. Like,
exactly. And that response is also very scripted. Like, that's a response that you talk about, like, waiting off. The parents say, like, waiting off to college. If you don't do it now, it's going to be harder when going back to college later. Buying a house. Like, that's such a, or like, that answer didn't even seem authentic.
Didn't think that one through all the way.
Right.
Yeah, it's just listen through, hear her out first, and because he's not wrong, but just hear her out first and like get her perspective. Like I think he thinks that she's a smart person. Well, why? If she thinks that this is something that could be a problem, maybe there's some validity to that, and just hear her out. Yeah. So.
I think they can get through this.
Yeah. And also it feels like they've been so good that they're like, we got to we got to highlight something that could be an issue, because no couple is perfect. But I think they've got so much going for them that this doesn't seem like the thing that's going to be the problem. If this was Virginia and Eric, maybe I would be even more concerned, but not for them. Brianna and Vincent, you guys got this. Hang in there.
Okay, so Paige and Chris, we see, let's start with Paige. So she meets with Dr. Pepper, and I think they had one of my favorite moments in the show thus far, where Dr. Pepper described Chris as being like a what did she say? Extraordinary narcissist or something narcissist.
Something like that.
She said
And it
narcissist
was-
twice.
It was my favorite. I was literally like cheering with my little arms in the air. It was like, yes, call him what he is. And even says to Paige that she's the superior human and that she's, deserves much better and all this kind of thing. So do you feel like Paige is in a better spot now with all this ending?
I don't. So, part of the issue I have is I've heard a spoiler. I don't know if this is true. If you don't want to hear a spoiler, please avoid the next.
Hit fast forward a few times.
Yeah, fast forward
Plus
like 30
seconds.
seconds. But apparently what's in these rumors, internet streets, is that they're still like on again, off again now, even after the show. So knowing that, it makes me like, I want to be like, yes, she's done with this, she's not gonna go back. But knowing that they're probably gonna still be talking is so, it feels like a tragedy every time I hear her say this, because I'm like, do you really believe this? If darn it. So like, what more can we say? Chris is not the best, and they just weren't the right couple. But damn it, girl. Damn it.
Yeah. I think it's definitely good for her to have that support from Dr. Pepper, because she has been through a lot, and to hear from the person who matched them together, like that, I think was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that this is just really like a strong sense of closure and step to move forward and be like, listen, Paige, I am sorry this didn't work out the way we planned. You were really hoping to be married, and have it stick, from your generational background you've talked about. But hey, this wasn't it. Go back again to your brother's advice where he was like, it doesn't always work out, sis. It's okay. You'll be okay. And I mean, we'll see. I'm hoping that Paige comes out stronger, and that because of this, now that she's able to see herself, externally again, like on TV, and she's just like able to reflect in that way, I'm hoping that this helps make her stronger and is like, you know what? No, not going to go back to any kind of situation resembling something like that ever again.
Yeah, that's a weird thing to think about, her watching this show.
Yeah.
Because you would assume that you would, right? That you'd want to see how you're being
Yeah.
presented. So
Probably.
she's being re-traumatized, like watching all this stuff he put her through. But it could be a good reminder that, like, yeah, he was not great to you. There was nothing good here. And, like, it's okay to just wash your hands and move on. Like, it's fine.
Exactly.
And then we see Chris meeting with Pastor Cal. He shows up quite late, and they made quite a production of showing that he was late, and looking at their watch, and are we ready to wrap now? And then just magically there's Chris, who busts in the door, is like, hey, what's up?
I would have left long time ago.
So they waited for him and had a not surprisingly unproductive conversation. Pastor Cal was trying to kind of pin him down, and I felt like overall Pastor Cal was just trying to get Chris to self-reflect a little bit, and it seems like nothing is getting through to him. I don't think Chris feels like he did anything wrong. He seems to think he handled it the best of his ability and all this stuff. So I don't know. What'd you get from that conversation between the two of them?
I kept thinking back when I was hearing Chris say, all I could think about was like high school guys that are just terrible, like superficial, not grown up yet. All they think about is looks. And I'm just like, wait, I thought we passed that phase. Like, who's this in front of me on TV?
Grown man.
Oh, a grown boy. Like, that's who it is. Because I wrote down what he said. Out of the million of women here, y'all picked the one that was like talking about Paige's face. Like, what?
Unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah.
How shallow are you? Like, you don't even deserve half of what Paige is worth, because all you can think about is when you first saw her down the aisle, she wouldn't have been the person you picked up at the bar or whatever he described it as. Like, get over yourself, dude. No one cares about you that much to be like, out of the million women we're going to pick for you. Like, come on.
His entire conversation, I was like, congratulations, you are officially the biggest villain in Married at First Sight history. You've done it.
Oh, yeah.
You have successfully done it. You were, it was you and Luke for a period there. You guys were neck and neck, but you just, you came through at the end and really solidified your spot. I feel like I say this all the time for so many different scenarios, but if that is the way you feel, because there are some people, everyone has their hierarchy of things they find important. Mm-hmm. He finds being attracted to his partner very high on the list. I'm not going to besmirch him for that. I think everyone has their thing. But if you know that that's the case, don't go on a show where they're going to pair you with someone that you don't know. Because by definition, they might pair you with someone that you're not attracted to. Mm-hmm. So that's how this works. Like, I wish everybody who came on the show was like an Amelia from Bennett and Amelia, where like that girl could have been with like a freaking belly dancer or a soccer player and would have been like, I'm just in this experience. Let's just play along. Like, I think you kind of have to have that perspective if you're going into this, because you don't know who you're getting paired with. And I think that's, I wouldn't go as far as to say shallow, but I would say that it's unfair, because if you're going to go into something like this and you know that that's something that you really care about, the same way like with Ryan, like if you know that you really care about religion and that's your thing, like make it very clear from the beginning, like I can't be with an unreligious a person that isn't religious.
Right.
If you know that you really, really care about how she looks, either give them as many details as possible so that they know what you find attractive, or just don't go on the show. Like like when Pastor Kyle was explaining why they picked her, it seemed like everything he said made sense to me. Like, you said you wanted a power couple. Boom. You said you wanted someone who could help you in your business. She's literally an accountant. She's going to bring the financial discipline that you're probably going to need. Like, all the things that is there, it's like on paper, they're perfect, but it's that attraction thing. And I know like this is such a sore subject because it's so, what is that term? Like, it's different for every person.
Unique?
It's subjective. Thank you.
Oh,
yeah.
Subjective.
It's subjective. So like him calling her unattractive, a lot of people think that she is attractive. So by definition, now you're like pushing down their opinion. Like it's just it's a no-win situation for anyone. And again, if that's what you care about, don't come to the show. Don't go on the show. That's it. That's all you need.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
I agree. Yeah. And he also had the bright idea that, Paige could have come with him in Mercedes when they bought her a car. That would have been a nice, triple date. Or, them all hanging out together. Like, that's a reasonable solve to the problem, right?
Right. He even used the phrase when he bought Mercedes a Mercedes.
He had to say it.
That was so stupid.
Just so you guys know, it was a Mercedes, like not just any car. Okay.
You know what I was thinking about last night though, because we just watched it yesterday. Can you imagine Chris going through the car buying process? He had to go to a dealership. It's got to be all about him looking like the big man that can buy a car. Can you imagine his negotiation skills with a salesperson?
Oh, they made bank off of him. Are you kidding me?
Because his ego is so wrapped up in how much money he can spend. He probably paid more for that car than it was originally listed for because he couldn't talk his way out of that. I was just thinking about it. I was like, it's like so counterintuitive from a business perspective. If that is what he wants to build this empire, all these different things. All of it is wrapped up in how much money he can spend. Yep. And it's like, when you're walking into negotiations with that point of view of like, I need to walk out looking like I am the big man, then you are always going to get terrible deals. You're always going to make terrible deals. And like that, you don't need to, I don't know what else to say about it. I was just like, it cracked me up a lot thinking about how he might approach that conversation. Like, so this is a $90,000 car. I can give you $100,000.
Right. Like,
Cash.
I used to sell knives, and you'd have to like read the person what they're like, and I can just imagine like just selling the features, like, oh, in this package, oh, and look how nice it looks, and like just like selling the value, and like you talked about, probably not even like budging on the money because it's just how fancy it's gonna look.
Like, I would see him negotiating the way he would view negotiating down a price as maybe people will see it as I can't afford the current price, and so he wouldn't do it. And the irony of that is just so amazing to me.
It really is unfortunate. It's just, come on, man. Yeah,
Right.
You're right. You're right. Also, like, for a person who continuously talks about wanting to build wealth, and
Right.
I think I don't want to go into this whole like rabbit hole of people who want the trappings of wealth but don't actually want wealth. Like, that's just like, even when he describes the fact that he continuously talks about how much money he wants to make, as opposed to like, if you want I'm gonna go into a rabbit hole, but the people who, I think that's the wrong viewpoint. Like, if you want to build things, if you are a person who enjoys building, like, you're a creative. People who are in our society now wealthy, they're people who like building businesses. They like, hey, there's a problem. I want to fix this problem. Let me get a team that can help me fix it. Like, that's a very different way of viewing a problem than I want to make $1 million. What are you going to do? And I think when people think in only the money, then you fall for this, lack of a better word, trap. Like, you want to look wealthy, not actually be wealthy. Like, how the moment you drove that car off the lot, it lost 30% of its value. Like, come on, man. Like, I've said that a lot this episode, but just it's like, I don't even, seeing all that just disappoints me, because you realize, I don't think this is just insecurity. And that one relationship that he mentioned, that like she broke up with him because he felt like he didn't have enough money. That's all this is. Like, he's constantly trying to, because he views having wealth as being, having money and buying all this fancy stuff as making him worthy. And that's all this is. And yeah, salespeople love that, man. Like, you're going to be perfect. Like,
Right.
You're the best type of customer that they can wish for. So I'm sure they didn't even talk about the car. They just talked about the payments for him. And he was like, oh, yeah, I can afford a $600 payment. He probably doesn't even know the interest rate on the car that he got. Just, oh, well.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before on the show, but this Coursera class I was taking out of Yale that was called, it's like the science of well-being and happiness or something like that. And I'm picturing her face, but I can't remember her name, but she's a professor, and one of the examples that she takes us through is how greed can be a very dangerous cycle. And she talks about the value or the amount of money you think you need to be happy. And there's this study of people who answer that question, and the more money you make, the higher that number just gets, because the whole moral of the story is that you think a lot of times, if you always want more, like, whatever you're making is not enough. If that's what you're fixated on, if you're fixated on the money, and you get acclimated to where you are now, it's not enough. You need more, because you're surrounding yourself with other people who are in the same financial bracket as you are. And that is all a value of like comparison to what other people have and what they make and what they spend it on. And so speaking in Chris's situation, he's talking about, having the best car, making $1 million per business, on each one of his side hustles. You're never going to be happy. You're never going to have enough. And that number is just going to get farther and farther away every single time. And you're just going to like lead yourself into, endless cycle of greed with money.
Yeah. I really was hoping he would some of what Pastor Cal was saying would get through to him, but I think he's too far gone. Like, he's frustrated with the process. He's frustrated with the experts for giving him this person that he wasn't attracted to. And
the face.
He was her face. What's wrong with her face? So I don't think he was going to be even remotely receptive to feedback in that time, but I see that honestly as the only way forward for him if he wants things to change. So it's on him, I guess, but hopefully we don't see any more of Chris and Paige and like them doing this get back together, separate thing, because it's really hard to watch, and also it's getting a little repetitive and boring. So let's move on to the couples who actually have potential.
Seriously.
Yeah, it was repetitive like 6 episodes ago. Like now it's just
like very quickly.
We have a whole nother couple to talk about. Okay.
I don't think we have a lot left for them.
Yeah.
So we got Haley and Jacob. I guess my general
in summary.
That's all I got.
Yeah.
That's all I got. I don't know. I feel like my basic summary for them is that they met with the experts. They talked through a few things, have a little glimmer of hope, had a somewhat productive conversation when they came back together, but I don't think anything is really going to change, nor has it changed. No. What do you guys think? Is that accurate?
I think so. Yeah. Like, I think the most realization, if anything, happened when Dr. Pepper was talking to Haley about how she's not really changing for him and how she's buying him clothes so that he can change his wardrobe. She's taking him out on wineries, and this is now their new favorite activity. And there's something else they threw in there too, but I forgot. And I mean, I think that's accurate to an extent. I just wish it kind of would have blossomed into something more, I guess, and where it's like a little more of a reflective period, but I didn't think that it happened. Yeah, I just think they're so far gone that there's like no hope in getting them back.
It's like I said, they're so far gone at this point. I think the editors know, like, I feel like they spent so much of this episode trying to prove to us that there's still a chance. And I'm like, no.
They got a lot of work to do.
No, there's not. And the amount of times that they just it's not a thing. I think she's a conversationalist. The way he communicates is very different from her. And like that has been interesting to see, is because before she was saying I do all this work, and I was like, what work? But I think in her head, when she tries to talk to him and he doesn't give anything back, and then she'll start another conversation, I think she views that as work and that he isn't willing to do said work. And some people, I'm a conversationalist, I talk a lot, and but that doesn't mean that if I'm dealing with someone who isn't, that I'm putting in work. Like, that's just naturally, I like doing that. Just like naturally that other person might not be open to talking. Like, it's unfair. So hopefully she finds someone. Hopefully he finds someone. I don't. Like, let's put them out their misery.
I think they both know it too, but they don't want to be divorced or single again. They're just trying to salvage what they can. Even with that whole, conversation where he hasn't really done a whole lot in the last 10 years besides date the last 5 years, kind of. And she has been single for 7 years because of the controlling relationship she had 4 or 5 years. It's just like, it's almost the imagery I have in my head is digging yourself a hole, and somehow the way you think you're getting out of it is to keep digging. But like, for them, I'm sorry, being single is not what you want, but is being in a relationship you don't want better? Like,
it seems like they're both miserable, honestly.
Yeah.
And I think that could actually be a point. They kind of have this common point of suffering almost, where they've been kind of wanting to be married, looking for a partner, wanting that settled down life with a special person for so long, and they've had bad experiences with relationships, et cetera, et cetera. That could be a point that they completely understand what that feels like. They could come together on that and be like, yo, hey, guess what? We're married. Like, we have the thing. We just have to build it. It's like getting the the furniture delivered to your house. You got to put it together now. It's just like, oh my God, I can't believe I don't have a desk. And it's like, well, you do. You just got to put it together. Like, just having the desk in that box
IKEA
over
instructions
there.
are there.
Yeah.
I mean, those IKEA instructions might lead to a divorce, but we got to try.
Yep.
Okay. Well, this has been a lot, as usual. If you're still with us after this 5th hour, I have no idea how long this thing is going to be.
You're the real MVP, listeners. You've tried. Yeah. Actually, we did have one brand. Mabel talked about Coursera and Yale
yeah.
in a good way. So maybe they'll sponsor us. Who
Hey.
knows?
Slide into our DMs, whoever you are.
We'll see.
That just sounds problematic.
We do have a overarching
Contact
theme
us.
though of DMs when we talk about Married at First Sight, because
This is
Agu's
true.
talking about the people who are going to get the DMs. Now you're talking actually about the companies.
Okay. So email us at cup-of-3podcast@gmail.com. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. This has been our review of episode 13, Unanswered Questions. We'll be back next week again for episode 14. All right, so join us next time. In the meantime, please go follow us on Instagram at cup-of-3podcast. And just so you know, we are on all podcast apps as well as YouTube if you want to see just the visual part of this, our faces as we're going through this episode.
And my Dominican Republic shirt.
Yeah, you gotta see Mabel's Dominican shirt. Like, what are you doing? Stop wasting your time. Go look
I like
at
how
it.
I'm dressed like every other person in Michigan. I got like a flannel. I got like a dad hat.
So
like,
come check out our style. That's the number one thing we know you care about, what we're wearing.
I look like a picnic table right now. Just no
Okay.
respect.
All right, thanks guys for joining us. We will see you next week. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.